Hey, seventh graders, it's Mr. Hillard again. I'm talking to you about our next flip lesson, which is Washington Presidency, which is going to be number 82 in our interactive notebook. Pretty simple, fill in the blank on the notes. We're going to take this, watch the video, get 5 out of 5, hopefully, and then get on with the rest of our information on the first president. All right, here we go. There we go. Oop, kind of in the way here. We'll go down here with George Washington. All right, so there was nobody that the founding fathers really thought was going to be the president of the United States besides George Washington. He was the guy that they had in mind the entire time. And quite honestly, if they hadn't come up with the Electoral College, they probably just would have given him the job. All right, so a couple things to know. The first two elections in 1789 and 1792 really weren't elections because Washington is the only president to win all of the electoral votes, and he did it twice. You can see a couple of states, a couple of places not voting in 1789. They hadn't put the they hadn't accepted or ratified the Constitution yet. And then 1792, you can see some of the electorals not voting. That's just because the electoral college wasn't bound to popular vote at that time period. And he's going to serve from 1789 to 1792, his first term. There we go. And then for his second term, he's going to serve 1792 to 1796. So a president serves 4 years, 2 terms, and that's going to kind of be one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later with his precedents. Trying to figure out the new computer here. All right. So presidents, as the first president, Washington sets a bunch of precedents or rules for other presidents to follow. So what's the idea of the president? You guys have precedents, right, in your family. So if you have a tradition that you do, say, every Christmas or every New Year's, if you have a tradition you do every birthday, or if you have a vacation spot your family goes to, that's a precedent. You go there because that's what you've always done. So presidents after Washington are going to do things because that's what Washington did, and they're going to kind of do it as he did because he's kind of held up as one of, if not the best presidents to ever hold the office. One of the biggest precedents that is going to be followed is serving for 2 terms of 4 years. Nowhere in the Constitution in 1787 until 1950 was there anything that said the president could only serve 2 years, 2 terms. But every president did that until Franklin Delano Roosevelt during Great Depression, World War II, who served multiple terms. But after that, it was made into a constitutional amendment that the president can only serve for 2 terms. So that was one precedent set by George Washington. Another precedent set by George Washington, let me get out of the way here, is the establishment of a presidential cabinet or a group of advisors. You got to remember, Washington was a general, okay? So when Washington was a general, he used his other generals to help them. Washington wasn't the smartest guy in the room, at least book smart type guy. He wasn't well educated, at least compared to like Jefferson, Hamilton, and Madison, and all those other guys. And he knew that about himself. And one of the things you talk about being a good leader is knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses. He knew his weaknesses, so he decided to surround himself with people who knew a lot about stuff, and then they could help him make decisions. So he created what was called the presidential cabinet, and it was probably the best cabinet ever. There's going to be lots of Supreme Court justices. There's going to be lots of future presidents and things like that in this group. But the 2 ones that kind of dominate are going to be Thomas Jefferson, who's the Secretary of State. Secretary of State deals with kind of foreign policy or issues with other countries. Alexander Hamilton was the Secretary of Treasury, so he's going to deal with the money. And to this day, our economy is pretty much based on how Hamilton kind of set it up. And he gave a farewell address. Every single president since then, Barack Obama, whenever Donald Trump leaves office, President Bush before them has given an address to kind of talk about where things are after the president leaves office. Ooh, let me get out of here. So Washington's foreign policy. What is a foreign policy? Foreign policy for dealing with other countries. So Washington, again, this is going to be another one of those presidency sets because the future presidents pretty much up until Madison are going to really try to follow this. Washington wanted the United States to remain neutral, meaning stay out. Okay, stay out. That's going to be one of our vocabulary words after we're going to pick that vocabulary term up on Monday. He wanted us to remain neutrals in foreign issues and events. All right. Big reason why the United States isn't ready. We just created this new government. We don't really know what's going on with it. So we've got to figure out, what to do. We've got to fix us. We can't worry about them. That was kind of Washington's mentality. He doesn't want the United States to get involved in politics of, say, Europe or Asia or, these foreign continents and places like this, England, etc. But he wants us to trade. He wants to build that economy, be trading partners, but not political partners. That's what Washington's vision for the United States is from 1789 to 1796. Domestic policy, all right? He wants a strong and stable government. Washington never really was a political party, but I would assume if we look at some of his decisions and some of his things, he was probably going to lean towards the Federalists. He believed in a strong and stable national government. All right, so domestic policy is the stuff we're going to do at home. The very first act, and this is kind of leading towards that Federalist, the very first act that he signed into law is the Judiciary Act, which is going to create federal courts in every single state. It's still like that today. Every state, New York to Wyoming, has a federal or government court. All right. He also, with the help of Alexander Hamilton, approves the first national bank that is going to set up the economic basis of our country. To this day, it's a lot more technological now, but really the kind of facets of our government date all the way back to this. Okay. So remember how we told you the farmers were angry in the Articles of Confederation? Well, guess what? The farmers were angry during George Washington's presidency as well, and it had the same thing, taxes. This is one of those kind of unique parts of history where you look at something and you're like, how could this possibly happen? How could we have Shays' Rebellion with the Articles of Confederation kind of mess with stuff and prove the Articles of Confederation wrong, and we have Whiskey Rebellion, and that kind of proves that the Constitution kind of got it right. But it happened. So in 1794, the farmers are mad. They're mad because of a federal tax on corn. Now, what does corn have to do with whiskey? Farmers in Pennsylvania were growing corn, kind of hard to get it to market, so they're distilling it into whiskey, and they're sending it, and they're making more money on that than they would just the normal corn. So as part of Hamilton's economic plan, they create some federal taxes. One of them is on corn. The farmers refuse to pay. They form a militia, and they pretty much are ready for a fight. All right. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds just like Shays' Rebellion. Economic issue, farmers get to arms. But during Shays' Rebellion, the national government could do nothing. This is the crazy part of the Whiskey Rebellion. Washington stops it himself. Talk about the enforcer of the law. Look at him in his white horse. Huge imposing figure. George Washington was 6'4" in a time where the average height for a male was about 5'6", 5'7". So he towers over the people on that white horse, that image of strength, that image of stability. He leads 13,000 troops to put down the rebellion. The farmers see, the hero of the American Revolution on this great big white horse, and they give up. No shots were fired. All right. So this response shows that the new government, the national government, is strong enough to deal with issues across the country and gives people hope that the government's going to be able to do what it needs to do. All right, that's our flip lesson for today. If you have any questions or anything like that, make sure to hit me up on Schoology or post a message right to the board, and maybe one of your classmates will be able to get back to you. Till then, Allard out.